Chapter 2152. Furthermore, although Luer had recently obtained the Poison King's legacy, and her poison skills had improved greatly, it was still a short time ago. There was still an upper limit to the absolute level of poison, as long as it reached the level of a heavenly being or above, although it could still cause gradual weakening and even eventual death. As long as the other party was not stupid, they would still be able to escape after being poisoned and weakened. At least in Chu Yang's heart, although he also believed that Luer's poison array could cause considerable damage, it should not have such exaggerated effects. Luer, what kind of poison did you use? Chu Yang asked Chu Luer, very puzzled. Chu Luer leaned weakly on his shoulder and said, I used a chain of 3 poisons this time, including the innate poison, the origin poison, and the heavenly softening poison. Chu Yang rolled his eyes. So that was it. He was also very familiar with the poison scripture. The Poison King's legacy was first placed in his mind before being passed to Luer. When he heard Chu Luer mention these 3 poisons, he immediately understood why no one had warned them. This girl was really too crafty. Her scheming in using poison was really at an unimaginable level. Of course, this also explained why Chu Luer was so weak now. The innate poison was the poison that Chu Luer used the most frequently. It could be considered a type of poison in the world. As for the origin poison, it was a step further than the innate poison that Chu Luer originally used. It was the most powerful poison, derived from the cultivation of a complete poison technique. There was a clear explanation in the Poison King's legacy. No one below the saint level could cure this poison. In other words, if one did not have the cultivation of a saint, one could only wait for death. Even if one was at the peak of a heavenly being and could rely on one's own cultivation to survive, there was no cure for this poison. It would gradually deplete one's energy, and one would still die in the end. As for the heavenly softening poison, in terms of its poison power, it was not considered top-notch. In fact, it was not even fatal. However, it had an extremely special characteristic. Even if a saint was poisoned by this poison, his mouth and tongue would be paralyzed for a certain period of time. He would not be able to say a single word, or even make a single sound. This was the heavenly softening poison. Even the heavens would go limp after being poisoned by this poison, let alone humans. This was the best explanation for the heavenly softening poison. Unfortunately, this kind of poison can't stay for long. After a period of time, it will automatically decompose and return to the world. Chu Luer stuck out her tongue. Otherwise, it might not be difficult to create a real Yama's gorge here. Chu Yang smiled bitterly and said, Little girl, do you still think that your abilities are too small? So many of us have been bathed in blood, and our bodies are covered with cuts and bruises. We can't even compare to the number of people you've killed with your poison alone. And you're still not satisfied? Triple poison chain. What a good move. What a scheme. What a good move. Chu Luer's pretty face stiffened. Brother, are you praising me or scolding me? Chu Yang's heart ached as he hugged the weak Luer tightly. It's definitely a compliment, the most sincere compliment. I'm afraid that more than a third of the enemies we have to face will be buried by your young lady's hands. Although it was just as Chu Yang had said, the continuous use of so many innate poisons and natal poisons was a huge burden to Chu Luer, and it was a great loss. Chu Luer didn't participate in any battles, but she was so weak now precisely because of this. With this buffer, everyone's injuries slowly recovered. The land of extreme darkness was completely silent. However, in this land of extreme tranquility, Chu Yang's heart was inexplicably moved, and the desire from before became even stronger at this moment. Tan Tan, who was beside Chu Yang, also seemed to be somewhat impatient. How is it? Chu Yang asked quietly. It feels very close, and it's getting more and more real. Tan Tan took a breath, and there was a yearning in his voice. I want to go over and take a look. Yes, the situation is temporarily stable now. You can go and take a look. Chu Yang suppressed the yearning in his heart. If the two of them only sensed the same opportunity, Chu Yang didn't want to interfere, and would rather help Tan Tan. Compared to brothers, what was a mere opportunity? Yes, where is your sense? Tan Tan said. Mine is in the southwest. Chu Yang was startled. He said, Mine is in the southeast. Tan was also startled. Then he said, "What did you sense?" Chuyang didn't want to monopolize it, and neither did Tan. When he heard Chuyang say that it was in the southeast, Tan felt as if Chuyang was helping him. However, he was clearly prepared to give it to Chuyang in his heart. Just as Chuyang had thought, a mere opportunity was nothing compared to a brother. This was also what Tan was thinking. To be honest, what I sensed is very strange, very strange. Chuyang sensed Tan's thoughts as soon as he heard this. He couldn't help but feel a burst of warmth in his heart. He said, "I sensed that I was getting rid of something, but I don't know what it is that I'm getting rid of. As you said just now, that feeling is getting more and more real, but it can't be described in words." Tan sighed and said, "It's not the same. I can conclude that what we sensed is absolutely not the same thing. What I sensed is a kind of powerful reality. It seems to be telling me that I can become unprecedentedly powerful as long as I can find him." Chuyang also felt relieved. "So that's the best. Why don't you go quickly?" "I go? Why don't you go?" Tan rolled his eyes. Chuyang smiled warmly. He stretched out his hand in the darkness and rubbed Tan's head. "I also sensed it. It's indeed not the same, I assure you," Tan suspiciously said. "Then let's go together? You go to the east and I go to the west." Chuyang thought for a moment. Tan won't feel relieved if I don't go. Moreover, Chuyang also sensed that these two brothers have encountered two different opportunities. So why shouldn't I take the heaven's gift? All right, Chuyang readily agreed. These two martial brothers were in an extremely dark place. They clearly knew that the other party couldn't see them. However, they still looked at each other and smiled. Who would give up the opportunity to reach the peak for me? But there are only two of us now. I can do it for my brother. I can also do it for my brother. Chuyang solemnly instructed everyone not to act rashly. The current situation was very clear, so it was better to stay still than to act. Then both of them got up at the same time and rushed towards some kind of power that was calling them. Chuyang had left the Tribulation Divine Spirit behind to guard everyone. It was certain that there wasn't any danger for the time being. However, it was better to be safe than sorry. The ones who could stabilize the morale of the troops were him, Tan, and the Tribulation Divine Spirit. Moreover, the Tribulation Divine Spirit was the strongest among them. If the Tribulation Divine Spirit wasn't there when the two of them left, and a new enemy suddenly appeared, it would be extremely bad. The relaxed smiles on Uncle Hu and Uncle Ma's faces turned grave when they learned that Chuyang and Tan had left for some reason. The two of them supported Yao Ningning, who was on the verge of collapse because of severe physical exhaustion. Then they said in an extremely solemn tone, "Your Highness, your humble subordinates have two words of advice. They are also words from the bottom of my heart. I want to report them to your Highness. I hope that your Highness can remember them, and don't neglect them." Yao Ningning said weakly, "You can speak. I'm listening." Uncle Ma took a deep breath and said, "Your Highness, no matter when, where, or under any circumstances, you must never become enemies with these two people." Yao Ningning grunted and said, "You're talking nonsense. We're brothers. How can we be enemies? I'm about to die from exhaustion. You still have the time and mood to talk nonsense with me." Uncle Hu smiled somewhat speechlessly and said, "Your Highness is right. Your subordinate is indeed talking nonsense." He thought that perhaps this was His Highness the Great Master's fortune. With his stupidity, he had made friends with these two powerful brothers for no reason. Moreover, he had also made friends with these two people. In the future, even if the Demon Empress was no longer here, and the Great Master was in charge of the Demon Emperor Heaven, Yao Ningning's position would be as stable as a mountain and unshakable, as long as these two people were still here. The affairs of the world were unpredictable and hard to describe. If the Great Master had a little bit of the aura of a royal family, or if he had a little bit of arrogance due to his status, and if he hadn't been so submissive, he probably wouldn't have been recognized by these two people. In that case, the Great Master wasn't completely useless. Humans were indeed simple and naive. This was the best. Luck and destiny were indeed innate. It was difficult for ordinary people to obtain, possess, and enjoy. It was just that, At the current stage, was it really good to be brothers with these two people? If he wasn't careful, he would be dragged into a bottomless abyss and endless trouble. Yao Ningning asked excitedly. What you're saying isn't all nonsense. According to what you're saying, it can at least prove that these two brothers of mine are very powerful, right? Isn't it? His eyes were already shining. It's not just very powerful. Uncle Hu and Uncle Ma looked at each other and smiled bitterly. These two men, one seems steady and calm, the other absurd. But they both have the air of a leader and a leader. They're definitely not simple people. Uncle Hu sighed a little. It's a pity that such talents aren't from our demon race. This time, it was Yao Ningning's turn to be a little dumbfounded. Why don't I see any bearing of a leader? I only feel that they're very impressive, she thought. Aren't the two uncles' evaluation of Chu Yang and Tan Tan a little too high? Successful superiors were all amazing. But amazing people were not necessarily qualified to be superiors. Chapter 2153. I'm afraid that even the two of us might not be able to make it through that stretch of road just now. However, even though the two of them were at the front of the most dangerous part of the road, and the pressure was heavier than ours, they still managed to make it through. Their cultivation is far inferior to ours, but they managed to do what we couldn't. From the series of subtle sounds just now, we judged that they were treating the wounds on their bodies. It's just that we heard different places. There are at least a dozen wounds on Chu Yang's body. There are about 80 wounds on Tan Tan's body. As for the other people, there are no more than 30 wounds at most. Not to mention that these wounds were made by experts. Even if they were ordinary flesh wounds, it's definitely not something that an ordinary expert can bear. The so-called wounds all over the body are easy to say, but how many people have really experienced such wounds all over their bodies? However, they can do this for their subordinates. This is the bearing of a leader. It's definitely not something that an ordinary leader can do. Uncle Ma concluded. Who wouldn't do their best to work under such a boss? This is the most frightening thing. Yes, there's also their development potential. Uncle Hu smiled bitterly. After thinking for a long time, he said, rapid progress. Given time, Chu Yang, Tan Tan, and their subordinates will definitely become a new force that will shake the entire Heaven Imperial Court. Uncle Ma gave a shocking conclusion. Uncle Hu nodded in agreement. The two youngsters, who seemed to be less than 20 years old, were already comparable to senior experts who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. Under such circumstances, they were still able to maintain an astonishing advancement of 1,000 miles a day. This could no longer be described as frightening. It was terrifying. Using these two as opponents was simply a nightmare. Once these two people become powerful, Mo Yuntian, Yuan Tianji this time, I'm afraid that he has really poked a hornet's nest. Moreover, it's the kind of super poisonous hornet that can poison people and saints to death. Uncle Hu said with emotion. Yao Ningning raised her eyebrows and said, Isn't it a little early to be emotional now? According to them, there are also brothers who are not inferior to them in terms of progress. There are as many as 5 of them. Why do all the brothers have to be like this? Uncle Ma smiled bitterly. Just these two are enough to make Yuan Tianjie unable to eat or sleep in peace. Tan Tan had been relying on his intuition the whole way forward. The sword in his hand had become a blind bamboo in his blind hand, a tool that guided him in the right direction. Relying on his heart's unusually solid senses, he brazenly advanced towards the place of infinite temptation. His heart slowly began to stir. This was definitely a great opportunity for him. He could clearly feel this. In his consciousness, the two source souls were talking like old friends. This kind of conversation had already been carried out countless times. After countless conversations, the two source souls had already gotten used to this kind of situation. If there really came a day where one of them was no longer around, then the other one would feel very uncomfortable. There was a man standing upright in Tan Tan's sea of consciousness. He was dressed in black clothes. His long hair hung down from his shoulders. His hands were clasped behind his back. He looked like a monarch who was overlooking the world. He had a graceful bearing. It seemed as if he was the only person in the world. In front of him was Tan Tan and Chu Yang's clown junior brother. He was sitting there cross-legged. He had an indifferent look on his face as he giggled. I was born, and I was destroyed. I was destroyed, and I was born. But in the end, two source souls were born. One body accommodates two source souls. And I can talk to my own self, after tens of thousands of years. This kind of opportunity can be regarded as unique and unprecedented. The Devil King Source Soul softly sighed. Tan Tan indifferently smiled and said, Yes, yes. Not bad, not bad. I also feel very strange. You are me and I am you. But we are clearly two different people. Ha ha ha. This kind of situation is really interesting. The Devil King Source Soul also chuckled when he heard this. Tan Tan solemnly said, But I still want to thank you. My progress wouldn't have been so fast if you hadn't taught me wholeheartedly during this time. The Devil King Source Soul faintly smiled and shook his head. You are me and I am you. Helping others and helping others is helping oneself. There's no need to be polite. Tan Tan laughed. This conversation is very likely to be the last one between you and me. The Devil King Source Soul was somewhat disappointed. He crossed his hands behind his back and looked at Tan Tan. His eyes emitted a strong emotion. Why? Tan Tan was somewhat reluctant. We can continue like this. I don't want to disappear. And you don't have to disappear. We can still talk to each other when we are lonely. Isn't this beautiful? The Devil King Source Soul stagnated. Your thinking is really different from others. Ha ha ha. At this time, you are actually thinking about the problem of whether you are willing to part or not. You are not worried about your own safety. Tan Tan blankly said. Worried? Why should I worry? What is there to worry about? The Devil King Source Soul warmly smiled. There was a bit of envy in his smile as he said, Perhaps, this pure sincerity is what you can rely on in the future. Tan Tan, the current you is something that the previous me would never have been able to have. Pure sincerity was something that I had pursued for a long time, but could never obtain. Now the other me has obtained it. I have it, but... The Devil King Source Soul looked up to the sky and sighed. Tan Tan blankly looked at him. He suddenly felt that the Devil King Source Soul's desire to leave was very strong. He couldn't help but beg. I say, don't disappear, okay? Get rid of this thought of yours. I really don't want you to leave. You also said that you are me, and I am you. What's wrong with having two souls in one body? I think it's very good. The Devil King Source Soul looked at him with interest and said, You don't want me to leave? It's not impossible for me to not disappear. If I don't disappear, you must disappear. If you don't mind, I will be very grateful to you. No, I mind very much. I mind very much. I say, isn't there a way to kill two birds with one stone and get the best of both worlds? Isn't it good for us to exist together? Tan Tan pulled his hair in distress. Why must one of us disappear? I don't know if you will miss me if I disappear. In any case, I will be very unhappy if I can't see you in the future. Silly child. The Devil King Source Soul sighed. This body can only be controlled by one soul. If two souls exist in one body, no matter how their minds merge, they will always restrict each other. This will cause the body to be unable to increase its power to the limit. Then, it will forever be unable to peek into the great Tao, and will forever be unable to set foot on the peak. This is a choice. Right now, I can already feel that the great Tao imprint is somewhere in front of us. If you and I coexist in one body, the moment we face the great Tao imprint, both of us will be destroyed. It will never obey two masters to obtain it at the same time. The great Tao is ruthless. It will only belong to one soul. The Devil King Source Soul faintly smiled. This is the selfishness of the heart. But sometimes, selfishness isn't necessarily a bad thing. Especially selfishness towards oneself. Only selfishness can lead one to bravely move forward. Tan Tan was at a loss. He truly didn't understand what the Devil King Source Soul was saying. This body has always been controlled by you. You have always been in control of it for so many years. Don't think that I haven't thought of snatching it away in such a long time. The fact is that I can't snatch it away. Don't think that I'm so kind. Perhaps your soul would have dispersed long ago if I could have done it. And you would have been annihilated countless times already. The Devil King Source Soul forced a smile. Tan Tan opened his eyes wide. He hadn't expected that this other self would have wanted to seize the complete control of this body. In fact, he had wanted to annihilate himself for eternity. He had been completely unprepared. Tan, I want you to promise me 3 things. The Devil King Source Soul stood tall and straight. His black robe suddenly fluttered. His face that had never been revealed had become even more blurred at this moment. Why do you need to do this? Can't we just not take that great Tao imprint? You and I can still coexist like this. Tan suddenly said. What? What did you say? The Devil King Source Soul was genuinely shocked by this statement. What kind of person is this? This is obviously a matter of great benefit to him. So, how can he change his mind in such an impossible direction? I have to sacrifice you if I want to obtain that great Tao imprint. I don't think it's worth it. Tan said. Do you know what great Tao imprint is? Do you know how difficult it is to obtain such an opportunity? You're giving up just like that. You don't have the heart of a child. You're simply stupid. The Devil King Source Soul couldn't bear it any longer. He roared. I really don't know what great Tao imprint is. But I don't care what it is. In any case, I don't think it's worth it to sacrifice you for it. It's not worth it. Tan said. I'm telling the truth. We're getting along well. You don't have the strength to take away the control of this body. I don't mind your existence. In fact, I like you. So, why should I make you disappear for some great Tao imprint? It's better to give up and go back. Tan said indifferently. No, you have to listen to me on this matter. Do you hear me? The Devil King Source Soul shouted himself hoarse. Why are you so stubborn? I'm willing to give up that great Tao imprint. So why don't you understand? You will disappear. Tan was extremely distressed. The Devil King Source Soul was speechless for a long time. He firmly stared at Tan. His eyes were filled with boundless excitement. The great Tao imprint. How many people had dreamt of it since ancient times? How many people had wished for it? Chapter 2154. How many people would kill each other if they had this opportunity? They wouldn't even frown. No one had ever given up such an opportunity for someone else. But Tan had given it up for him today. With an indescribable excitement, the Demon King's Source Soul couldn't help feeling a surge of emotions. It's too late. Now that we're here, we can't go back. The Demon King's Source Soul chuckled. Tan, being able to help you is the greatest fortune of my life. Tan tried to turn around and walk back. He found that he couldn't take a single step. He could only walk forward. He couldn't move in any other direction. Tan struggled with all his might. But he still couldn't move. He suddenly felt disappointed and frustrated. His eyes couldn't help but turn red. What should I do? The Demon King Source Soul smiled warmly. The opportunity has arrived. What's yours is yours. You can't refuse it. Tan, don't forget my request. I want you to promise me 3 things. What things? Tan instinctively felt sad. So he asked. The first thing is that you must reach the peak. This peak is something that our divine race, or rather, the devil race has never reached. It's the ultimate domain that no one has ever reached before. The second thing is, you must always maintain this pure and innocent heart. For the rest of my life, this is what I wish for. I hope that my other self can maintain this state of mind forever. The third thing is my unreasonable request. The Demon King Source Soul faintly smiled. He hesitated for a moment. Then he said, You and Xia Dan Feng will get married in the future. And your first child will be called Tan Xiao. Tan said somewhat anxiously. There's no problem with these. The first thing is a bit difficult. I will try my best to achieve it. But I can't do anything if I can't. The Demon King Source Soul chuckled. It's no matter. Besides, you have your brother by your side. He will do his best to help you. Why do you need me? He reluctantly looked at Tan and said, Tan, goodbye to my other self. I can feel that this place isn't far from the end. Go and collect the biggest opportunity of your life. Tan felt dizzy. Then his consciousness returned to his body. He was surprised to find that his body had already arrived in a place that was even darker than before. In fact, it was so dark that there wasn't even any air in this place. When he was talking to the Demon King Source Soul, his body followed the voice in his heart, but he didn't realize that he had unknowingly arrived in this strange place. Right in front of him, there was a black bead that was constantly emitting circles of dark ripples. The Demon King Source Spirit's voice sounded in the darkness again. This is the origin bead formed by the universe's origin, controlling all darkness. Tan stepped forward and received him. This is a special thing that can only be formed by the great Tao of heaven and earth. No one, no matter how high their cultivation is, can create such a strange thing. This is the true creation of heaven and earth. It's a truly unparalleled opportunity. The Demon King Source Spirit gave a soft laugh, but this laugh was filled with an indescribable bitterness. Only Tan can obtain that essence bead. I absolutely can't obtain it. Bare sincerity. Tan's gaze was instantly attracted by the dark bead. He couldn't help but walk over step by step. If there were outsiders here, they would only see darkness in front of them. They wouldn't be able to see the bead. However, Tan clearly saw it. Moreover, it was so clear. After taking 7 steps, the bead was already within his reach. From afar, it looked like a goose egg-sized bead. However, when he got closer, the bead was only the size of a rice grain. It was surrounded by a dense black gas. Tan Zhong reached out, but then retracted his hand. He understood that if he took it, the Demon King Source Spirit would probably disappear. Unwilling, extremely unwilling. The Demon King Source Spirit roared in his consciousness, "Take it!" Tan felt his head explode with a burst of dizziness. He couldn't help reaching out to grab it. The next moment, a wisp of black gas spread out from the bead and quickly climbed up Tan's palm. Then, it followed the meridians in his arm and quickly entered his body. It went deep into Tan's consciousness. In his sea of consciousness, the Demon King Source Spirit calmly watched the black gas enter. Its eyes were shining with a blazing light. This is my dream. This is the ultimate Leduo that I once dreamed of, but never had the chance to see. After the black gas entered, it seemed to sense the existence of the Demon King Source Spirit. Suddenly, it turned into a sharp blade. Dense murderous aura. The Demon King Source Spirit bitterly smiled. Sure enough, I'm destined to disappear. That black gas turned into a blade and chopped down. The blade cut through all illusions in the world. It cut through all illusions. The Demon King Source Spirit chuckled and said, "Although I'm destined to disappear, I won't be killed. I won't be killed by the blade of the great Tao. That would be harmful to my present life." His body floated, and he dodged the blade. Then he silently said, "My present life, my past life, I'll say goodbye forever." He closed his eyes. Then, his 2 legs suddenly dissipated and turned into black gas. They entered the black gas that he had just entered, and were quickly assimilated. Then it was his body, arms, and hair. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back. It seemed as if he was completely indifferent to his body dissipating, and no longer existed. The assimilation speed of the black gas became faster and faster. Gradually his face was revealed. It was a handsome face. It was so dignified that it could make people suffocate. But this face only appeared for a moment. Then it turned into black gas. Perhaps the word Tan in Tan's name meant this? The Demon King Source Spirit finally disappeared. It disappeared from the 3 realms and the 5 elements. It didn't matter how world-shaking he was when he was alive, or how unhindered he was in the world. But when he died, he was filled with peace and serenity. His life's cultivation had turned into the purest devil energy. It hovered in Tan's sea of consciousness, and then embedded itself in Tan's flesh, blood, bones, and meridians. He had found his rightful place. Tan suddenly felt a tearing pain in his heart. His consciousness immediately entered his sea of consciousness. But he only saw 2 eyes looking at him. They were filled with hope and calmness. It seemed as if they were saying to him, "Goodbye, Tan, my life." Tan suddenly burst into tears. He then shouted, "So it's you. So it's because you're so handsome, bastard. That's why I'm so narcissistic. Don't go Boo-hoo. Boo-hoo." The Demon King Source Spirit had already disappeared, so it naturally wouldn't answer him. Tan was grief-stricken. He bawled. The black gas of that bead was unceasingly pouring into his body. He seemed to have completely forgotten about it. He was immersed in his infinite grief for a long time. The tears that flowed out were black. In fact, they were even darker than the dark night. They were just like that ink-colored bead. It seemed as if the endless black gas was pouring into his body like a great river. The black gas around the bead slowly began to thin. Finally, the black bead entered Tan Tan's body with a whoosh sound. Then, Tan Tan felt an explosion in his mind. Countless pieces of information exploded in his mind. Then the meridians of his entire body swelled up. It seemed as if his bones were about to burst out of his body. Then, endless energy crazily gushed into his dantian from the heaven and earth. Extreme pain invaded his body and mind at this moment. His consciousness, his soul, and his primordial spirit were all affected. Then Tan Tan suddenly fainted. 2 drops of ink-colored tears fell on the ground. They gradually turned from black to clear. Then they evaporated. I will definitely fulfill your 3 conditions. You and I will walk the path of the great Tao together. There seemed to be a voice sighing in the dark. Everlasting, the origin of the stars. Born from the heavens and earth, the supreme devil soul. On the other side, Chu Yang went all the way to the southeast. Not long after, he felt that the call not only existed, but it was also getting stronger. The Sword of Swords Calamity Sword inevitably became a tool to explore the way. Chu Yang slowly searched for it. Along the way, Chu Yang felt that some inexplicable grass and moss were getting thicker and thicker in the places he walked. Chapter 2155. Although he couldn't see what they looked like, he could only rely on his sense of touch. There were 3. Some of the horns were oval, some were round, some were zigzag, and some were simply irregular. There were no more, only stalks of grass. There were also some that didn't have any special features on the surface, but the things that grew underneath were all kinds of strange things. There were calabashes, cannonballs, bamboo shoots, bowls, and even peaches. Ugh! This wasn't a very long journey, but there were no less than hundreds of densely packed plants. Weeds. Moreover, as long as there was something in front, there was absolutely nothing in the back. And what was in the back? There was nothing in the front. There are at least 300 types of plants here. Chu Yang identified along the way, and finally, he found that there were no more plants in front. If he could confirm that there were no mistakes, then there were as many as 300 types of plants here. In front, there was still darkness as far as the eye could see. However, in this dark place, there was a strange feeling of infinite light. Yes, although his eyes still couldn't see any light, this was what Chu Yang felt. Between them there was light. There was infinite light. Speaking of which, this was a problem that couldn't be explained at all. Even Chu Yang himself thought that he might have an illusion. He couldn't even see himself. So how could he feel the infinite light of the world? Wasn't this bullshit? But this feeling was real. Before he took a step, the place he was standing on was a grassland. But after he took a step, the place he was standing on became a desert. Chu Yang swallowed a mouthful of saliva and slowly walked forward. After only 3 steps, he felt that the light in front of him was becoming more and more dazzling. He even felt some pain in his eyes. But when he opened his eyes and looked out, it was still darkness. The pain caused by the dazzling light was immediately eliminated by the endless darkness. Chu Yang clearly felt that the feeling was in front of him. He made up his mind and stretched out his hand to grab it. Then, Chu Yang's hand suddenly stopped in midair, and he didn't move anymore. Chu Yang clearly felt a wisp of white light from his fingertips suddenly enter his body. The next moment, something rushed straight to his brain. Then, there was an endless stream of white light coming in. Chu Yang opened his eyes wide. All he felt was the constant dazzling white light. However, as soon as he opened his eyes, all he could see was darkness. The contrast of light and darkness was extreme. His vision was filled with endless darkness. However, in his consciousness, there was clearly a blazing sun in the sky. His dantian suddenly felt bloated. Chu Yang didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly used his inner vision to observe, only to see that the amount of primordial real silk in his dantian was increasing rapidly. Chapter 2157. On that blue planet, a young man in white who was watching the waves turned his head thoughtfully, looked at the void, and murmured with a smile, "Right now, I am also very happy, because I am also very much looking forward to the day when I will fight with you." An extraordinarily beautiful woman turned her head and smiled gently. Who are you looking forward to fighting with? There is actually such a wonderful person in the universe. The young man in white smiled evilly, stretched out his hand, and pulled the beauty into his arms. The person I am looking forward to the most is to fight with you. Don't you think so, Qing Han? The beautiful woman's face suddenly turned red, and she struggled hard. Go and fight with big sister Mei. Why are you looking for me? When elder sister Mei was mentioned, the young man's face immediately turned bitter and bitter. He sighed and said, when it comes to her, I really don't know what to do. Qing Han, you have to be the judge. What kind of life have I been living? I'm in an abyss of suffering, bitter and bitter hatred. It's hard to explain. The beautiful woman was surprised. What's wrong with big sister Mei? Why do you say that? The young man in white sighed helplessly. You judge for me. I just want her to return to her original form, and then let me pinch her little butt to play with. I really miss the feeling of that time. Sigh. It's such a simple request, but it hasn't been fulfilled even once after so many years, and every time I ask for it, I will be met with cold violence. This, I really can't live anymore. Uft. The beautiful woman laughed on the spot. This is purely you looking for trouble. You actually want big sister Mei to return to her original form, and let you do that. What the hell are you thinking? Did you eat the wrong medicine? You want me to judge for you? As she spoke, her face suddenly turned red. The young man in white laughed, and said with a salivating face, Sigh, I really ate the wrong medicine. I instantly felt cold. I am freezing to death. Quickly help me warm up, come on. The woman in white immediately pouted. But the young man in white held her in an overbearing manner, and didn't let her leave. Then, the young man in white snapped his fingers, and the two immediately disappeared from the place. Vaguely the young man in white said, Come, I'll fight with you first, and then I'll seek revenge from your big sister. Chu Yang heaved a long sigh of relief, as he regained clarity of mind. At this moment, he really felt like he had gained something. New life, the subtle feeling. He was about to go back when he heard Tan Tan's panic-stricken and bewildered voice. Senior Marshal Brother. Chu Yang, where are you? Chu Yang was overjoyed. Being able to speak is a good thing. Tan Tan has also completed it. He hurriedly said, I'm here. Could it be that Tan Tan has encountered another unforeseen event? How is it so shameful? What happened? What happened to him? What's the matter? What's the matter? Aren't you afraid to tell me? Chu Yang anxiously asked. I, 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 I am pregnant. The corner of Chu Yang's mouth twitched, and twitched again, and twitched again. So it turned out that after this opportunity, this fellow was similar to himself. Inside his body, there was also that little person. Chu Yang had already figured out what was going on after many explorations. He didn't know the specific situation, but he was certain that it wasn't a pregnancy. Rather, it was a kind of mystical martial technique. The Heavenly Imperial Palace martial technique has never been seen before. Chu Yang's playful heart flourished when he saw Tan Tan's pitiful state. He couldn't help but raise his brows. You're pregnant? Who did it? Do you know who it is? Tan Tan cried until he was hovering between life and death. I also don't know who did it. How did I get pregnant in such an inexplicable manner? A small person has appeared in my body. A small person has clearly appeared in my body. I don't want to live anymore. Chu Yang almost spurted out his tears. These words were too ambiguous and awkward. It was as if he had been gang raped. He didn't even know whose child it was. Tan Tan's face was full of panic. He grabbed Chu Yang. Senior Marshal Brother. My dear Senior Marshal Brother. I don't dare to let Dan Feng know about this. By the way, you're a divine doctor. You have to think of a way to help me. Save me. See if you can remove this vile spawn from my body. Vile spawn? Remove it. Remove it. Chu Yang's complexion was extremely strange. He thought, you're only pregnant with one, and you're already shouting so loudly. You're full of twins. Wouldn't you cry to death if you had the same thought? Although he didn't know the specifics, Chu Yang was very sure of one thing. If we really come up with a way to get rid of those villains, I'm afraid that both of us will become crippled in an instant. Cough cough. I say Tan Tan, you don't actually have one, Chu Yang said. It was really too awkward. A certain king of hell didn't know how to express himself clearly for a moment. How can I not? I saw it. I really have one. For some reason Tan Tan, who usually didn't understand Chu Yang's words, actually understood at once. He even continued, You're really not pregnant, Chu Yang said with a headache. Senior Marshal brother, you don't need to comfort me. I saw it clearly. I'm really pregnant. I really don't need to comfort you. Quickly think of a way to get rid of it. Tan Tan urged anxiously. What the hell? You still don't want to listen? Listen to me clearly. I'm a divine doctor. I'm seriously telling you that you're not pregnant. Chu Yang was at his wit's end. He could only use the expert's means to forcefully explain. Isn't this pregnancy? Really not. Tan Tan raised his head with tears in his eyes. Yes, definitely not. Do you only have one of those small people? Chu Yang asked. Yes, one is already amazing. Could it be that there's 3? Then I don't know what to do. Tan Tan said very discontentedly. Obviously, he was very dissatisfied with Chu Yang's ignorance. Cough, you only have one and you don't know what to do. The old one has 1. Even if you really have 3, the old one has 3 times more than you. Chu Yang's face was distorted. What? Tan Tan looked at him with a face full of shock. He suddenly jumped up. You got pregnant in one go? Senior Marshal brother, you're too strong. Although I've heard of multiple births, I've never heard of so many. Can you give birth in the future? Chu Yang was furious. What do you mean by pregnant in one go? Give birth to what? Do you want to give birth? Tan Tan suddenly stopped crying. Then, he actually took pleasure in Chu Yang's misfortune. Waha, so you're also pregnant. Then I'm relieved. Moreover, you're actually a ha. Then I'll just follow your pace and see how you adapt. I'll just follow and learn. Anyway, if I lose face, it won't just be me. The risk on your side is at least twice as high as mine. As he spoke, he actually became complacent. I find that I'm becoming more and more brilliant. It turns out that I'm even stronger than Senior Marshal brother. Chu Yang was speechless. He couldn't help but kick him. In the sky, a black-clothed man listened to the conversation between the two of them. His whole body was twitching with laughter. He almost went crazy. The old one hasn't been so happy in so many years. After all, no matter how much heaven and earth Yuan Qi was raised in the past, even leaping over 20 realms in one go, the amount of heaven and earth Yuan Qi required to raise half a realm was not as much as the amount required now. The amount of energy required to advance from the elementary level to the advanced level of celestial being was roughly equivalent to the sum of first-grade supreme martial artist to second-grade supreme martial artist, and 10 times more. And the amount of Yuan Qi required to advance from the first level to the higher level was several times more than the initial level. Under such circumstances, he had leaped from the peak of the beginner level of the celestial being realm to the peak of the celestial being realm, and could even reach the legendary sage realm at any time. This was a special situation that was close to becoming a Buddha on the spot. Peak of the celestial being realm, Chu Yang's eyes lit up, and although he had not really verified it at this moment, he vaguely felt that his peak of the celestial being realm was probably different from other people's peak of the celestial being realm. And it was not only because of the difference in the number of dantians, because this difference alone was not enough to prove his suspicions. Chu Yang felt that he was really full of confidence now. It was a kind of strong confidence that he would dare to face any enemy with his sword and be able to win. It was not conceit, not arrogance, but confidence. Genuine confidence, unparalleled confidence. This unprecedented confidence came from the fact that they were twins. Chu Yang even vaguely felt that as long as he wanted to use power, that little one would immediately provide him with inexhaustible power. This feeling was very subtle. Chu Yang did not know where it came from, but it was so real that he could not doubt it. I am now one step away from the peak of the celestial being realm. Sigh. Tan Tan felt that his strength had improved greatly. He was excited but also a little depressed. Why was he always one step weaker than Chu Yang? In order to help him, Even the Demon King's soul was sacrificed. Why was he still one step weaker than Chu Yang? If someone else had heard these words from his heart, perhaps even De Ho would have caught Tan Tan and swallowed him alive before speaking again. You fucking improved from saint level to high-level celestial being realm in an instant. And you are still not satisfied? And you still feel sad? Even this fucking Sei is not as sad as you. The two of them, one in front and one behind, floated back, a little dizzy. A big pie fell from the sky. I ate it, I swallowed it, I caught it. But I was also knocked out at the same time. I was really knocked out. The two of them had the same feeling. It was real. At this moment, Chu Luer had already drunk water 13 times. She was still spitting saliva everywhere, as she talked about Chu Yang's legendary stories. However, Chu Yang and Tan Tan didn't choose to close their eyes. Instead, the two of them calmly walked out. They faced that ray of light. A somber and desolate aura came from outside. There was a large army stationed in front of them. Obviously, it was Mo Yuntian's soldiers. Chu Yang's eyes were cold. He smiled and said softly, "We were chased by you for so long. Today we can finally get some interest back." Tan Tan didn't say anything. Instead, he laughed heartily. They didn't know if there were thousands or tens of thousands of soldiers lying in ambush outside. However, these two martial brothers didn't even check the enemy's situation. They were ready to fight. They took a step out of the canyon. The dawn arrived. The front was bright and clear. If they took a step back, it would be dark. If they took a step forward, it would be clear sky for thousands of miles. The wonders of this place could be seen. The sun was setting in the west, and it was already afternoon. Although the sun was setting in the west, it still shone brightly. The autumn wind was bleak, bringing with it a hint of warmth. The autumn wind whistled and swept across the sky. Countless drifting yellow leaves spun around and covered the ground. This place was an empty land. 1,000 feet away, it was Mo Yuntian's army. The other party's head was black. There were at least 10,000 people. The person at the front had his hands behind his back. He was standing proudly. However, his face was full of worry. His brows were tightly knitted. It was Meng Wuya. Behind him was his personal deputy. In front of the large army, there was one person standing in front of each army. They were the 10 generals under Yu Qi. There were a total of 13,000 people here. They were waiting for Chu Yang and the others to come. The black fog in front of them was dense. It was as if a demon had opened its big mouth. After everyone came out of this place of eternal darkness, they didn't want to go back in again. At this moment, the black fog seemed to have become denser for some reason. Then two people walked out of it leisurely. It looked like they were on an outing, and their bodies were full of ease and ease. Seeing so many soldiers on the other side, the two of them were actually able to maintain their composure. They slowly walked over with unusual calmness. Behind the two people, one figure after another appeared from the darkness. In this kind of broad daylight, they were like a team of demons. They appeared from the boundless darkness. Meng Wuya's pupils contracted. He counted carefully one by one. 10, 20, 28. Apart from Chu Yang and Tan Tan who walked out first, the two little girls, the Demon Clan's Grand Master and his two bodyguards, there were still 28 people left. The corner of Meng Wuya's mouth could not help but twitch. In this Yama Gorge, such a sophisticated ambush, no less than 10,000 people were used to set up the ambush. With such great fanfare, with such a big fuss, only a few people were killed? Meng Wuya clearly remembered that when these people stepped into the Mist River, there were no more than 30 people. After that, a few more died, and now there were 28 people left. In other words, there were no more than 5 people who died in Yama Gorge. This kind of inference made Meng Wuya's heart twitch. Meng Wuya was not unfamiliar with the person in front. It was Chu Yang. With a wave of Chu Yang's hand, the people behind him, including Yao Tai, all stopped in their tracks and quickly stood in a row. Then, the two young men in the front still maintained a calm and leisurely manner as they walked forward. Meng Wuya stared at Chu Yang cautiously. He could clearly feel that the current Chu Yang was very different from the previous Chu Yang. This kind of thought made him instantly increase his vigilance. The other Mo Yuntian soldiers looked at the two people who walked forward step by step. Under the setting sun, their shadows were elongated. At this moment, they actually had a feeling. If these two people walked into our troop like this, would the shadows behind them cover all of us? Then they returned to Tantan's hand. More than 100 people slowly fell down without exception. Dozens of arrows of blood suddenly spurted out from each of their bodies. It seemed that none of them would be able to survive. Everyone didn't have enough time to be surprised when Tantan's side made a move. He took the lead and rushed 30 feet in front of General Qin. Then he suddenly stopped. He changed from a swift and violent forward charge to a leisurely stroll. He clasped his hands behind his back and leisurely paced 3 or 4 steps in front of General Qin. He then asked in a carefree manner. It seemed as if this trivial matter wasn't worth mentioning. "Hey, am I handsome or not?" General Qin was dumbstruck. He looked in front of him in disbelief. His 100-man team had slowly fallen down. Their bodies were shrinking at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. They fell down one by one with a plop sound and turned into corpses. How could he respond to Tantan's "Am I handsome" or not under such a great change? He felt as if all the blood in his body had rushed to the top of his head. He glared at Tantan in a split second. It seemed as if he wanted to eat him alive. "Ugly bastard, you're so ruthless. You're so vicious." Tantan flew into a rage. He couldn't maintain his carefree demeanor anymore. He was flustered and exasperated as he cursed. "Fuck you. I asked you a question with such a good attitude. Are you fucking deaf? I asked you, am I handsome or not? Don't fucking stare at me and don't speak. You fucking aren't mute. I heard you speak a moment ago." General Qin almost fainted from anger when he heard this. This ugly bastard is clearly someone who would make me want to vomit if I look at him. And I would get nightmares if I look at him twice. But he has killed my 100-man team without any mercy. And he still has the nerve to ask me this question in front of me. Am I handsome or not? What kind of person is this? Does he have any sense of shame? You're fucking handsome. General Qin's nose became crooked from anger. He roared like thunder. You rotten bastard. You're a heavenly damned scoundrel. You don't have the face to ask me if I'm handsome or not. Do you have any sense of shame? He then roared again after he was done speaking. You're a heaven-struck executioner. This old man is going to swallow you alive. Tantan's nose became crooked from anger when he heard this. Speaking of which, this General Qin was also a first-rate expert and had the cultivation of the heaven level. In the Mo Yuntian army in front of him, even if he couldn't be considered as outstanding, he could at least be considered as one of the top 20. However, he was like a 3-year-old child in front of Tantan, whose cultivation had skyrocketed. Moreover, he was absolutely invincible at the same cultivation level as him. Bang! Bang! General Qin's body was smashed to the ground almost continuously under Tantan's extremely fast swings. Traces of cracks had already appeared on the hard ground. It was a hideous sight. Finally, after a few hundred smashes, General Qin's head could not hold on any longer. Suddenly, it left his neck and rolled out of the room. His head was separated from his body. He was dead. A heaven-level expert had been smashed to death by Tantan in such an extreme and unreasonable way. He had relied on the strength of his body to smash him to death. Thousands of soldiers who were about to rush over to rescue General Qin suddenly stopped in their tracks. They looked at Tantan as if they were looking at a devil. Tantan's ferocious eyes swept across the faces of thousands of people. The evil aura lingering around his body had not dissipated. He looked straight at them. Many people immediately shivered. Am I handsome? Tell me, am I handsome? Tantan casually grabbed another enemy soldier and asked with a fiendish look. You're handsome, my ass. This squad leader scolded loudly. Motherfucker. You still dare to echo the crowd? You don't know what you're talking about. Tantan punched this squad leader into the sky. That person's body was still in midair when it suddenly split into pieces. Tantan then grabbed another one. Am I handsome? He grabbed another one. Am I handsome? Am I handsome? Bang! 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 Dozens of people were thrown into midair by Tantan. Their dantian had been sealed the moment they were thrown. When they fell, even if their bodies were still intact, they would be smashed into meat patties because of the free fall. Bright pools of blood blossomed on the ground. No one was lucky enough to escape. Everyone, let's get rid of this crazy ugly bastard. It was unknown who took the lead to shout. Then, more than 1,000 people under General Qin's command rushed forward with a rumbling sound. Chu Yang saw this and was about to help when he heard Tan Tan shout. No one over there is allowed to come over. I must fucking ask today, and see if there's anyone in this group who can't lie with their eyes wide open. I don't believe that these people can collectively go against their conscience and not tell the truth in front of the handsome and elegant me. As he said this, he rushed towards the thousands of people alone. With a loud shout, thousands of demon energy surged out like a tide of spears and sharp swords. The corner of Chu Yang's mouth twitched. Sigh. My silly brother, I am afraid that you will be disappointed. When will you change this bad habit of yours? In addition, General Qin and Meng Wuya's army still remained motionless. They looked at more than 1,000 people ganging up on one person. Their faces were indifferent and expressionless. In fact, no one even uttered a cry of alarm. Yu Qi's army had always been like this. Unless there was an order from the commander, they would attack together. General Qin's headquarters had already accepted his order. Since this was the case, it had nothing to do with the other troops. Unless all the people in this troop died, no other troop would intervene in this battle. One person against 1,000 soldiers. But the tragic momentum of this battle seemed like two elite troops fighting with their lives on the line. Shouts and screams reverberated like thunder. Screams rose and fell one after another. In addition, there was a loud and clear voice constantly shouting, "Am I handsome? Am I handsome? Am I handsome? Can you fucking speak the truth? You bastards are lying with your eyes wide open. All of you deserve to die. Go to hell." Tan Tan's voice was filled with grief and indignation. Chu Yang sighed in his heart. Chu Yang had been worried about his brother ever since he had come to know about the Devil King's special existence. So, he had naturally done a lot of research on the Devil King and Tan Tan in case of emergencies. Chu Yang had long suspected that Tan Tan would ask everyone he met if he was handsome or not. And Tan Tan would be unhappy if others said that he wasn't handsome. In fact, Tan Tan would force others to say how handsome he was. This wasn't a kind of hobby, and it wasn't because he wasn't handsome at all. Instead, it was because Tan Tan subconsciously knew that he was very handsome. So much so that Tan Tan's heart and soul believed that his essence was extremely outstanding and handsome. This was the affirmation and recognition of his heart. So, it wouldn't be swayed by any external force, and it would lead to such a special result. Moreover, Tan Tan had received two souls in one body. So, Chu Yang suspected that the Devil King was outrageously handsome, and the Devil King was equivalent to Tan Tan. Tan Tan felt that there was no difference between his appearance and the Devil King's. In fact, they were exactly the same, and they were exactly the same as each other. So the unexpected disappearance of the Devil King's soul had undoubtedly dealt a huge blow to Tan Tan. He was fighting like a madman. Moreover, he was constantly asking that question. It seemed that he was extremely narcissistic, and it was extremely funny. However, he was actually filled with an indescribable bitterness. Tan Tan's murderous nature was unprecedentedly big in this battle. In fact, it was somewhat unpleasant. Perhaps, Tan Tan was using this battle to bid farewell to the Devil King. Chapter 2163. His voice was like a huge wave, breaking through the entire sky in an instant. It reverberated in the sky for a long time, lingering in the air. Let's go. Everyone, let's kill this demon as soon as possible. Tan Tan's last move was to rush into the heart of the enemy's army. This arrogant move undoubtedly aroused the intense anger of everyone. You're outnumbered. We have more than 10,000 people here. How dare you rush into the heart of the enemy's army? Not to mention that you're not a saint-level expert. Even if you are, you can't be so arrogant. The great general gave the order at the same time. Countless soldiers and horses besieged Tan Tan. Everyone's hearts were as one. At this moment, there was another long and elegant shout. A voice that was completely otherworldly said, "A single ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. What harm is there in slaughtering the world? A sharp will buried deep does not change. gather the wind and clouds to become the emperor. Meng Wuya, who was watching the battle, closed his eyes in pain. He said softly, Chu Yang, he finally made a move. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Chu Yang walked out confidently like a flying cloud. His figure was full of confidence and ease, but it was mixed with an astonishing speed that far surpassed the speed of flowing light. Together with his sword, he was like a long rainbow that startled the heavens. Just like that, he elegantly landed in the midst of the densely packed enemy ranks. As the long sword trembled rapidly, the Calamity sword let out a soft whistle. The dots of cold light were like brilliant stars in the sky. Moreover, each sword fell accurately on the vital points of each enemy's throat. It didn't stop at all, because there was no need to make a second attack. The bodies of all the enemies that were killed by his long sword swayed. Thin arrows of blood spurted out of their throats. However, the thin arrows of blood had already exhausted all the strength in their bodies. The only thing they could do was to use their hands to cover their throats. Their throats were hoarse, their eyes were bulging, and they slowly fell to the ground. The Calamity spirit hovered above Chu Yang with a sinister ghost smile. He opened the Taoya's mouth again, and swallowed all the souls and death energy of the dead at the first moment. Chu Yang moved forward slowly, step by step. The Calamity sword was by his side, forming a bright protective light ball. Sometimes it shone brightly, sometimes it was a long dragon, sometimes it shone with heaven-shaking divine light, and sometimes it was glorious and mighty. Wherever Chu Yang went, the enemies behind him would fall down in droves. Mo Yuntian's elite soldiers were like clay chickens and pottery dogs in front of Chu Yang at this moment. They were slaughtered as they wished. Not a single one of them was a match for him. This time, not a single person was injured. I immediately uploaded it to Public Prestige. Everyone, please take out your mobile phones and search for Wind Rides the World on Public Prestige. Follow me. Then, see if this midnight is to your imagination. Chapter 2164. If one were to talk about the most headache-inducing matter for the Demon Clan's royal family at this moment, it would be none other than this Grand Master was too lazy. He was obviously a talented person who could achieve extraordinary things as long as he put in a little effort. But in terms of cultivation, he was like a fish in the sea muddling along. If he could deal with him, he would deal with him. If he couldn't, he would deal with him. This led to countless resources being wasted or left idle. Now there was finally a glimmer of hope for this Grand Master to work hard. It really wasn't easy. The two of them almost burst into tears, but they were somewhat speechless. This little bit of encouragement actually came from Chu Yang's hands. Mo Yuntian's army, under the repeated attacks, was already in a state of collapse. If they were not fighting in the Demon Emperor sky, but in Mo Yuntian's own territory, these people's morale would have already been reduced to a mess. But this was Demon Emperor Heaven, far away from their homeland. They were unfamiliar with this place. Naturally, no one dared to provoke them if they followed the army. But if they were to become deserters, they might not even be able to survive for a while. Under the ravages of the two madmen, and the heavenly poison young Miss Poison Fog of Death, the 15,000 soldiers fell in droves and died in droves. More than half of the soldiers had been lost so far. And Bai Yu Chun and the others were also like mad demons, fighting bravely without any regard for their own safety. But as long as they were in real danger, someone would come to their rescue. Until now, not a single one of them had died. This was really unexplainable. They couldn't block, they couldn't trap, they couldn't kill, they couldn't beat them. 5 out of the 5 generals who led the troops had already died. And all of these 5 people had died for the same reason. They had found out that Chu Yang and Tan Tan couldn't be killed after a fight. So they had simply changed their target. I can't kill you. But, can I kill your subordinates? But it was under this kind of psychological stimulation that when they ruthlessly killed Bai Yu Chun and the others, then, one of the 2 murderous stars would suddenly rush over like a madman. The next moment, they would be smashed into pieces. All 5 of them died like this. When the remaining 4 generals saw this, how could they still dare to charge out? They could only choose to stay behind and do their best to arrange and command the troops, hoping for a miracle to happen. They would do their best to put more pressure on the enemy and hope that they could exhaust their combat strength with numbers. This was the best way out of the situation. Or rather, it was the only way. 15,000 people besieging the other side's 32 people. Yet they were still able to fight in such a sullen manner. This was truly unheard of. In an instant, everyone on the battlefield had an illusion at the same time. All the weapons and hidden weapons that they had never seen before in the world shot out from that high and mighty crown. It carried a strong aura of death. Countless black gas condensed into all kinds of weapons, hidden weapons and weapons. They poured down from the sky like a torrential downpour. Such power was abundant and irresistible. Puff, puff, puff. The sound of hidden weapons piercing into human bodies was like rain hitting a sandpit. There was no way to defend against this wave of attacks. This was because this was a super dense, large-scale attack that was indiscriminate. Even if one could defend one side, they would not be able to defend against the other. Even if one put up an all-around defensive net and protective shield, they would only fall into an awkward situation of being weak everywhere. There were endless screams and wails below. Mo-Yin-Tion soldiers fell down one after another. Fresh blood poured out as if it was free of charge. There was only one black figure standing proudly in the air. He had a crown on his head, and he looked disdainfully at the world. He stood tall and straight. His whole body emitted a cold and ruthless aura. It was as if all living beings were just ants in the eyes of this figure. With one move, the entire army was destroyed. Divine Soul! Chu Yang suddenly roared. With this super outburst of Tan Tan's wave, it formed an extremely large-scale killing power. Although it was enough to make anyone's heart cold, Chu Yang also clearly knew that this move was probably Tan Tan's last crazy move. It was also the last move to send off the Demon King's original soul. It was the last outburst. After this move, Tan Tan was bound to fall into a period of extreme exhaustion and weakness. He looked awe-inspiring and murderous at the moment. However, Tan Tan would be in an unprecedentedly dangerous moment when he would become weak in the next moment. I finished going crazy. I finished going crazy. After receiving this command, the Tribulation Divine Soul let out a long roar and suddenly transformed in the air. Laughing strangely, he rushed into the crowd with black smoke all the way. Wherever he passed, all the soul power was swept away by him. All the death energy suddenly turned into the origin power of the Tribulation Divine Soul. Puff, puff, puff. With this, nearly 300 people's heads exploded under the Tribulation Divine Soul's sweep. Kill them all! Tan Tan roared with great momentum. Kill them all! Bai Yu Chun and the others had been sullen for such a long time. Now that they finally got a chance to vent their anger, they naturally fought with all their might. The enemy's camp, which was originally exceptionally thick and boundless, slowly became sparse. The Mo-Yin-Tion army's battle formation, which had a total of 15,000 people, only lasted for 3 hours under the combined devastation of these 32 people. Unexpectedly, they were all killed and injured. The number of people who could still fight now was less than 1,000. The Tribulation Divine Soul crashed into the last remaining crowd. The Tribulation Divine Soul had been nourished repeatedly, and his strength had been completely restored. The destructive power produced at this moment could be said to be infinitely terrifying. Moreover, there was the heavenly poison young miss behind him, and the Tribulation Sword Master behind her. They were all killing machines, super killing machines that harvested human lives. It's over. Meng Wuya sighed with some pain. This battle, where the disparity in manpower was great, but the final outcome was completely reversed, finally ended. As far as the eye could see, there were corpses everywhere. Chu Yang waved his hand. Bai Yu Chun and the others supported each other and gradually retreated from the battlefield, leaving only Chu Yang alone. Chu Yang straightened his body and suddenly waved his hand in Meng Wuya's direction. An extremely powerful force gradually condensed in this space. It was as if countless tornadoes had suddenly appeared in the air. Therefore, the large number of corpses on the ground were actually swept up by this invisible wind. They slowly gathered together and finally formed a neat square. This extremely precise and superb control caused Meng Wuya and all of his subordinates to suck in a breath of cold air. Chu Yang can still have such power in the midst of such a great battle. Meng Wuya stared at Chu Yang with a complicated gaze. It could not be denied that there was deep wariness hidden in his eyes. Chu Yang said lightly, I heard that Marshal Mo Yin Tian you personally came to kill me, but I did not have the chance to meet you. It is really regretful. I did not welcome Marshal Yu's arrival. It is really impolite. Chapter 2165. Just now I am a little tired. If General Meng did not have his teachings, Chu Yang would like to leave and find a place to rest. Chu Yang smiled, his handsome face remaining calm. A total of 15,000 enemies were wiped out, then giving the corpses as gifts to the enemy's commander. Chu Yang's actions were almost crazy, but Meng Wuya deeply understood that this was not because Chu Yang was inhuman, cruel and merciless, but because Chu Yang was using such actions to express the anger in his heart. Perhaps there was a deeper meaning behind these words. These corpses are a warning from Chu Yang. If anyone else came, the result would be the same as these corpses. Or it could be said that this was a challenge to the entire ink cloud sky. Chu Yang, I admit that your strength has increased greatly, and this old man knows that I'm powerless against you. However, you've acted so arrogantly this time. Isn't it a bit too much? Meng Wuya's expression was bleak as he said, I did not do my best and have been punished by the Sky Emperor. After this, I will return to Ink Cloud Sky to receive my punishment. You and I may not have the chance to meet again, Meng Wuya said heavily. It is no longer important who is right and who is wrong in this matter. But before I leave, I still have to give you a word of advice. Consider it a little communication between you and me. Chu Yang took a deep breath, and his expression turned solemn. Please speak. Meng Wuya was silent for a while. The world is big, and there are many experts. There is always someone better than you. It is definitely something you cannot imagine. This sentence seemed to be an empty statement that had no meaning at all. Hearing this, Chu Yang was unexpectedly silent for a while. After thinking for a while, he finally said seriously, Thank you very much. Meng Wuya's expression was still heavy as he nodded slightly. He had always felt guilty, and had a good impression of this young man in front of him. After today, there was a great chance that they would part forever. He would rather use this last chance to give this young man a word of advice with all the experience he had accumulated in his life. Chu Yang suddenly raised his head and said, General Meng, to return the favor, I also have to give you a word of advice. Meng Wuya sighed. Please speak. Chu Yang said softly. I believe that Marshal Yu will have experts of the saint level under his command this time. But in this battle, including the canyon, I have never met one. With our strength, even if we can't change the battle situation when facing experts of that level, we would not have suffered as little loss as now. Chu Yang completely ignored Meng Wuya's increasingly ugly expression, and continued to say, Elder Meng, your situation in Ink Cloud Sky is not good. Meng Wuya's face was expressionless as he said indifferently, Chu Yang, the mountains are high and the rivers are long. He waved his hand and was about to leave. Chu Yang smiled faintly. He didn't say any more superfluous words, and turned to leave. However, at this moment with a loud bang, the sky suddenly darkened without any warning. From the dark Yama gorge that Chu Yang and the others had come out from, countless things suddenly rushed out with a crashing sound. Bang! 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 A cold voice said, Chu Yang, not only did you give me those gifts, you also gave me these gifts. Everyone's expression changed. Looking closely, they were all shocked. What fell from the sky were also many corpses. Just by looking, there were at least 4,000 to 5,000 people. The previously empty space suddenly turned into a sea of blood, and a mountain of corpses piled high. A burly figure walked out step by step from the Yama gorge with a gloomy face. You lie. Marshal Yu of Ink Cloud Sky. He had rushed here at such a delicate moment. Following behind him was a large group of military officers from Mo Yuntian. Every one of them had a dense murderous aura around them. The way they looked at Chu Yang was as if they wished they could swallow him whole. Yu Lai and the others had been waiting on the other side to completely cut off Chu Yang's possible escape route. But after waiting for more than a day, they still did not see the people inside come out. Everyone was a little surprised by this result. According to the predetermined strategy, no matter what, someone should have come out now. Even if Chu Yang and the others did not come out, their men should have come out. The delay of information was the biggest taboo of a military strategist. So Yulai could only send people in to investigate. But after sending 3 batches of people, there was no news at all. Yulai knew that something must have happened. He immediately led 100 trusted experts into the Yama Gorge. By this time, the poison that Chu Luer had set up had begun to weaken. Besides, these people were all top experts. After discovering that there was poison, Yulai immediately used the Saint's conveyor technique to empty the surrounding air. Then he wrapped everyone with his deep cultivation and walked all the way in. But after entering for a short distance, they found a large number of corpses. But in that dark place where there was no light, even with Yulai, they could not tell whether these corpses were the enemy or their own people. After searching for a while, relying on some things that the corpses were wearing, they could tell that all the corpses were their own people. How did our people die here? Yulai ordered to bring the corpses and continue to move forward. But they did not expect that there would be more and more corpses in front. Searching one by one to confirm their identity would be too late. Yulai ordered to bring all the corpses. Yulai's murderous aura was heavy. Meng Wuya, from what you said, I am wrong to say that you are a traitor? Meng Wuya was not afraid. He said, yes, Deputy Commander Yu's words are indeed thoughtless. Yulai's face suddenly turned black. He turned his head and looked at Chu Yang. In a deep voice he said, Chu Yang, I have long heard of your great name. Just an ant like you can make us, the people of Moyen Heaven, go to war. This is really something to be proud of. At this moment in this situation, don't you want to say something? Chu Yang was a little confused. Yulai was obviously happily arguing with Meng Wuya. But when the internal conflict was fierce, he suddenly turned his head to talk to him. Moreover, he said something that did not make sense. He could not help but roll his eyes and said, say something? What is there to say? Oh right, I still have something to say. What I want to say is very simple. You Moyen Tian people can be my enemy in this life. Even if you die in the Yellow Springs, it is something to be proud of. Yulai's words were full of arrogance and condescension, but Chu Yang's counterattack was even more ruthless and did not leave any leeway. The positions of both sides were clear. Naturally, there was no need to leave any leeway in the conversation. To be hypocritical and courteous at such a time would only lower his own status. Yulai's face was cold. He said with hatred, Chu Yang, you have always been talking about unfairness. It is our Moyen Heaven that has let you down. Now, I will give you a fair chance. You have just finished a great battle. You must be very tired and have little strength to fight again. I will give you a chance to recuperate on one side. When you are full of energy, we will continue this battle. Chu Yang squinted his eyes and said with a smile, you are indeed the commander of Moyen Heaven. How imposing. But I don't know what kind of fair chance Deputy Commander Yu is giving me. Is it the hundreds of people here fighting me alone? Or is it me fighting more than 100 of you alone? Yulai said faintly, you'll know later what this marshal's tongue is like. Then he turned his head and no longer paid attention to Chu Yang. Chu Yang laughed. He simply sat cross-legged on the ground and started to recuperate. Meng Wuya's expression was inexplicably sorrowful, his lips trembling. His eyes, which had always been wise in the past, were now a little frantic and confused. It was as if his life's belief and persistence had all collapsed at this moment. Behind him, more than 1,300 Dream Slayer army people were also in a daze. Shwa! The hundreds of Ink Cloud guards who had survived the previous battle suddenly retreated in an orderly manner, pulling away from the Dream Slayer army. At this time, they were retreating to make their position clear. We have nothing to do with Meng Wuya. They were not Meng Wuya's direct subordinates, but belonged to the royal family of Ink Cloud Sky. So this was not adding insult to injury. Now that the situation was clear, Meng Wuya and the Dream Slayer army had been convicted of treason, so it was not strange that they wanted to protect themselves. In an extremely quiet place, Only the sound of the footsteps of more than 100 people could be heard slowly moving forward, rustling. The sound of tears falling down. Those were the tears of the Dream Slayer army soldiers. The distance between the two sides was getting closer and closer. General is not a traitor. We are not traitors. Suddenly, a Dream Slayer army deputy general's face was full of tears, and he screamed at the top of his lungs. As he screamed, he suddenly rushed out without caring about his own safety. We are not traitors. We have never been traitors. His body trembled, and he opened his hands. We want to see His Majesty the Sky Emperor to explain. This is Wuxia's trap. General Meng is innocent. We are innocent. We want to see His Majesty the Sky Emperor. However, more than 100 people opposite him did not say a word. Their expressions were cold, and they stared at him coldly. A sword light suddenly flew out. Wu Changfeng, get out of the way! Meng Wuya shouted, but the deputy general called Wu Changfeng did not react at all. He opened his hands and blocked in front of everyone, shouting, General Meng is not a traitor. We are innocent. Like a bolt of lightning, the sword light pierced into his heart. At this point, Wu Changfeng's voice came to an abrupt end, and he looked at the sharp sword in his chest in confusion. Suddenly he shouted heartbreakingly, We are innocent. His majestic body suddenly fell forward, and thick blood slowly spread under his body. Meng Wuya's eyes were wide open, and he shouted, Wuxia, no matter what crime we bear now, we still have to go back to Mo Yin Tian. We should at least have a chance to appeal. Why do you want to kill us now? Wuxia said indifferently. You still want to go back to Mo Yin Tian? You still want a chance to appeal? Should I say that you are blindly loyal or stupid? Or are you a complete idiot? He waved his hand coldly and shouted, Kill, leave no one alive. Wuxia had prepared all of this for a long time. When he first came out, he had not met with Meng Wuya, and had not investigated at all. He had already sent back news that Meng Wuya was chasing Chu Yang, and there was something fishy about it. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.